Let's start talking about LOIs. This is one of the key documents early on in the acquisition process, and it can have a pretty significant impact on the whole transaction, how this document is set up and worded. What tips do you have for borrowers to be successful with this document?
Yeah, so this is going to come off kind of funny, but um, you want to be as absolutely clear as possible on the terms of the transaction without bearing it down with legalese. Um, because if you're throwing out, a 15-page LOI on $1 million HVAC business, odds are it's probably not even going to get looked at. Um, it's overly complex for that type of business and for the size of that business generally. And so make it clear, but also make it quick. Now, am I saying do a one-page LOI? No, definitely not. But quick and concise is best because it leaves less to ambiguity. I mean, if you're asking for a seller note, identify the terms so that they can know what's expected um, in the life of that seller note. Okay, sure, I'll put my skin in the game and I'll provide a seller note. But what type of accrued interest am I getting for that? Those are the types of things that sellers are going to take into consideration, especially if you're up against other individuals with LOIs, to say, okay, well, you know, offer A is full price with a seller note. Offer B is 5% less with no seller note. What makes the most sense here? The other thing, or another thing I would recommend is um, try and connect with the individual personally. So some of this is going to happen pre-LOI, just in your general conversations with them. But at the end of the day, ultimately, this is somebody's business, and this is generally something that they started. So this was their dream, and there's an emotional tie to that. So when you're writing in an LOI, keep that in the back of your head. This is more than a spreadsheet to them. This is more than a financial model to them. Remember that. Because ultimately, if you do win that LOI and you do close and you fund that business, it's more than a financial model to you because you're now the operator. So when you're entering into conversations and writing LOIs, keep that in the back of your head because there are people, owners, and employees behind the LOI that this is going to affect.
Business is about people. Business is absolutely about people, and people want to do business with people that they like.
Right.
And I tell people, I think that rapport with the seller is one of the most overlooked components of due diligence. That was a big thing when we sold our laundromat. Finding the right buyer was, is this someone that we feel comfortable handing our business off to?
Right.
Right. And not everyone who approached us was someone we felt that way about. People work really hard at their businesses, to your point, and they want to feel good about selling it, not necessarily just selling to the highest offer in all cases, but really feeling good about that
Right.
transaction. Let's talk a little bit about exclusivity. How do you see that playing out in LOIs, and what tips do you have for borrowers in that particular area?
Yeah, definitely. So when structuring an LOI, I always recommend to buyers to include an exclusivity clause. So essentially, what that means is once you're under LOI, you have an identified amount of time to procure financing and close before they are re-engaging the marketplace for new LOIs, new offers. And so, I'm seeing right now, especially this year, but really highlighted in the last 6 months, is a supply and demand issue. We have a huge supply of buyers and a much lesser supply of businesses. So odds are you're probably up against other buyers in those instances. And so if you do not have an exclusivity clause, legally the seller is, they can back out, you know, right after they sign for the next highest offer. And so without that legal protection, you can, be monetarily down the road and time. You can lose time down the road and it can get retraded underneath of you. And so I would recommend definitely putting in an exclusivity period, but then also making it reasonable from a timeline standpoint. SBA loans don't take 30 days. Um, so don't put in a 30-day exclusivity clause because you're going to blow through it. Um, Generally, it's 60 days, which means I would recommend an exclusivity clause of 90 days because things come up. People go on vacations, there's back and forth about the purchase agreement, kids get sick. You've got to work with a lender schedule, the lender's attorney schedule, the business valuation, your schedule, the seller. There's all a bunch of parties to these transactions. And so I always recommend asking for a little bit more. But again, keep in mind that there is a seller behind this and don't kick it out, 180 days or something obscene, because you still want to have a finish line and making sure that finish line is consistent with what your financing can achieve. But then also you and your legal or due diligence team are able to meet as well.
If you're enjoying this content, make sure to subscribe and check out the links in the show notes to find out how you can get in touch with me to discuss your business acquisition deal.